Hi, my name is Zachariah Van Slyter with Old Man Gaming, and this is another horrible game review. So let's get right into everybody's favorite part, the disclaimers. Disclaimer number 1, I am a house dad. I do not do this professionally. Therefore, you might hear my kid, you might hear my dog whining in the background. I might take really long, weird pauses, not really collect my thoughts very well. I'm not going to go back and edit it because I don't make any money. Disclaimer number 2, I don't give games a point-based rating system because I believe games are one of the most subjective forms of art there is. Therefore, I'm going to give you an overview of the game. I'm going to give you my pros and my cons, and hopefully that helps you decide whether you want to play the game. And then the final disclaimer, as usual, is I don't get a ton of time with these games. I don't do super in-depth games. It's kind of like an everyman sort of look at the games. So if you want super in-depth or, a good review at all, you're going to have to go somewhere else. With that out of the way, let's dive right in. Today's game is Vigor. Currently in the game preview or beta section of your Xbox. It is eventually going to be free to play from what I understand, and it's supposed to be releasing later this year. This game is really interesting and a really tough one for me because in some ways it's genius. Something that is going to move Battle Royales forward where I think they need to be moved. And in other ways it's just terrible. So, overview. It's a multiplayer game. It's kind of a battle royale. It's set after some nuclear holocaust of whatever. And the idea of it is you divide your game in half. One half by going out into situations. These are the battle royale sections of up to 12 players, where you go in, you do your normal thing, you run around, you loot, you shoot at people, whatnot, and then the other half of it you spend in a shelter that you slowly build up with the parts and stuff that you find in the encounters. You also craft all the guns you take with you into the encounters, as well as the ammunition, as well as the healing supplies. This creates a really interesting dynamic. The idea behind the encounters are not be the last one standing. The idea is get what you need and get out without getting killed by anybody else. Because if you get killed by anybody else in the actual encounter, all the stuff that you went in with, you lose. I felt like the look of it, once you're in an encounter, and that's what they call the kind of battle royale sections, the look of it kind of resembles PUBG a little bit, in my opinion, graphically and movement-wise, although the UI is a little bit better. The encounters themselves last roughly about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, a wave of radiation comes in, and you have to try and escape. If you get caught in the wave of radiation, you, of course, die. Another cool thing to obviously bring people together and force more combative situations is towards the end of that 15 minutes, an airplane will drop an airdrop, just one, and it's got the best loot in it. Guns, ammunition, and all crafting supplies that you could possibly need. So the idea is you have to kind of weigh whether you're just going to loot the random houses around and then escape early, or if you're going to get in it for the long haul and try and go into that big battle at the end for the airdrop loot. The shelter itself isn't super interactive, and it's not super customizable, although there are options all over the boards that say that customization is coming soon, so I'm assuming that because of its beta form, it's just kind of like a simple house. But the idea of that is you slowly build things onto the house that give you more materials, which allow you to craft better weapons regularly, so that you can go in and you can take not such a big hit when you die and you lose all your ammo and weapons that you went in with. And that's the loop of the game, like the entirety of it. Go into the encounter, loot, try and survive, come back to your shelter, upgrade your shelter, get new stuff, go into another encounter. And that's the gameplay loop in itself. So with that, let's go into the pros. Okay, pros. This is the kind of thing that battle royales need to do to move forward as a genre. And I'm going to commend the people who came up with Vigor because the idea that you can go into one of these things, one of these encounters, and you can play passively. I usually play passively with battle royales, and that doesn't work out because you get to the last like 5 people and you don't have any equipment to fight them with. With this, it's really more about survival, and it really captures that survivalist aspect that battle royales first captured when they first came out, and I feel have kind of lost a little bit. The other thing is, this speaks to casual gamers. One thing I've talked about with a friend of mine on our podcast recently is you can't, the battle royales are becoming impossible for casual gamers to get in. They're losing that player base. With this, it brings the casual players in, because if you're a casual player, you can just you can play it real easy, you can play it real safe, you can get in, get out, and even in those matches where you don't kill anyone, you don't feel like a failure. You feel because you get out with something, and that's really nice. I can't tell you the amount of times I've spent 40 minutes in a battle royale match. I don't kill anyone, and I just end up getting headshotted at the end, and it makes you feel like you wasted your time. You never feel like you wasted your time. You feel like you accomplished something, even when you really didn't accomplish that much. The other thing is, too, the shelter itself, while I'll talk about it a little bit in the cons, the idea of it is that it gives you something to keep coming back to, some other mechanic that keeps you interested in the looting process, and it puts more weight on the going into the mission and looting. It's not just about what you need to survive or win at that time. It's really about like what I can get to get back to my shelter, to work on my shelter, to make myself better. And that's a true aspect that battle royales, they need to start doing stuff like this. They need to start evolving as a genre. And I love battle royales, I really do. But until they start adding these kind of interesting aspects, they're going to keep isolating and alienating the casual player base, and that's going to hurt them in the long run. So let's go to cons. This game is buggy, super buggy. It is in beta form. I want to say that ahead of time before I go into this. So my big problem, though, is they have said repeatedly that they're releasing it soon. If they're releasing it soon, this game is not ready for release. In the course of playing, when I first downloaded it, I couldn't even get on for an hour. And then once I got on, I would say 1 out of every 5 matches, it would boot me. Now, I wouldn't lose any of the stuff I went in with, but I wouldn't get any of the stuff I managed to grab while I was in there. And when I was in there, a couple of times, I had tons of loot and just lost it, just booted me back to the title screen. So that's a serious problem. Like, you have a multiplayer game and you have connectivity issues, and that's big. The other thing is, too, I feel like, and again, it's a beta form. They've said that they're going to add customization stuff, but I feel like with the shelter, while the idea of it is really cool, there isn't a lot, like once you really get into it, it's a very simple linear advancement of the shelter. Like the shelter doesn't really look any different than anybody else's. It's a very slow, like you advance it in basically the same way everybody else does. It's kind of, the progression is very stilted. And I think if you're going to do something like this, you really need to give the players a ton of options when they're in that shelter area, because that's going to give them more weight and want to go into the encounters and to get out. I realized about, I would say like 10 or 11 games in, that I didn't care that much about the shelters anymore, and I was mostly collecting loot to craft stuff to go back into the encounters, and that's kind of a problem considering the idea of the game. Like I said, I feel like this game is really great ideas with kind of poor execution. And again, there's developers working very hard on this game, so I don't want to insult them. It's also in beta form. It's probably going to get better. I was pleasantly surprised with my experience with it, even with kind of like the unfortunate stuff with the bugs and the shelter not being as dynamic or interesting as I would have liked it to be. And again, I only got to play it on a free to play weekend, so I really didn't get to like dig in. If this game does go free to play, I will dig in, and we'll see if that kind of like expands my experience with it. But for now, it was still just a little bit undynamic, and the loop got a little stale because of that. Because there's not, with the encounters, because you're just trying to get the stuff and get out. Like, I never felt specifically drawn to grab that airdrop. I felt like I was going to get killed if I did that every time, and I never wanted to lose the stuff I had. So very rarely did I actually fight for that airdrop. I did once, I got murdered. So that was another problem. I think they need a little bit more incentive when in the encounters to force the firefights. But again, I played it solo too. You can play it in pairs, and I bet you pairs you'd be a little bit more brazen with a partner with you. So, all right. Well, that's my review, my horrible review of Vigor for Xbox One. I hope this helped some people out there. And if it didn't, go find a better review, because this isn't a good one. But as long as you guys keep watching it, as I always say, I'll keep making them. Hey, are you into self-torture? Do you want to watch more of these terrible, horrible reviews? Well, you're in luck, because if low production values are your thing, click any of the things you see around you to see more terrible reviews that I did in my basement. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for a steady stream of abuse.